Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Barry. It's good to see you again.
Del.
Yeah. So just to recap for a second, last week we talked about the gift of vulnerability, which I thought was a great show. I think we really hit some great points of why it's so important to be vulnerable. How we, from that place, we connect. Not only do we connect with the truth of who we are and our authentic self, but with each other. We find our tribe. There's no game playing. There's no guesswork. It's we're just present, and the whole of us, and that makes it safe for other people to be equally present with us.
And it also improves your relationships.
Exactly. I meant in relationships with each other, romantic relationships, all relationships, and the relationship, as we say, with ourselves.
Right.
But we also are aware that sometimes we share, ourselves very courageously, and sometimes it's not well received. Sometimes there are other people that are just really not interested in getting to know you that well. And there
Yes.
can be certain ways in which they handle that can create, depending on who you are and how much work you've done, and it can create an anxiety within you, which I describe as the the vulnerability hangover. It's like the next morning you wake up going, oh, what did I do? What did I say? Was I too much? Did I reveal too much? Can I take it back? What can I say to make it go away? So
Right.
I thought it'd be a great topic to have because as I said, it doesn't matter how much work we've done, we can still have pockets of that come up. And I'm the first one to have a pocket of that. Sometimes I've done a podcast, or I've been in a situation where I've let my feelings be known or shared an intimate fact about myself, and the next day I can be a little bit like, oh God, who have I hurt? Who have I upset? Did I say too much, as I say? So I think we all have it from time to time. It's just part of actually being vulnerable, is to allow that to come up within ourselves without judgment.
Well, that's the thing. Without judgment, that's
Mm-hmm.
the key. Because the thing is that the other terms that we've used besides vulnerability hangover, though, is the things when somebody's looked at you after you said something to them or showed something to them, where they say like too much information, like TMI,
Yeah.
or
Mm-hmm.
they call it also, in the conscious movement we call it like overshare, or like you shared more than you're supposed to, sort of thing. There's this temptation for the person who was told that to suddenly back up and feel like they've gone too far, they've exposed too much, they've become too almost overwhelming of the other people,
Mm-hmm.
and so it can feel a bit regretful. There's a sense of the person who was the person sharing the vulnerability. They can always feel like there's a chagrin or an embarrassment by doing it, and definitely it can feel like you call it a hangover, which is an interesting term. You may not get the headache, however, you do get the feelings inside that can be upsetting. I'll say that for want of a better word. So
Yeah.
definitely, there's it can show up for people, definitely, and I've been there myself.
Yeah. Well, let me clarify what I mean by hangover. I'm not exactly saying we have a headache, we feel sick, no, but what I meant is it lingers. It's
Yeah.
something that you don't just let go. It's something that possibly the next day you go, oh, and it hangs with you. And it's that self, self, what's the word I'm looking for? Recrimination, or you blame yourself. And
Yeah.
I had an interesting conversation with somebody the other day, and she was saying, I never apologize for who I am. And if I
Wow.
shared a part of myself and you weren't ready to, or willing, or able to receive it, then that's nothing I should apologize for.
Hmm.
And she was not talking about attacking, or she just was talking about showing up as herself. And she's
Yeah.
a big personality, trust me. And I see, and I who I adore and love. But she's unapologetically who she is, and you can
Hmm.
take it or leave it. She's never aggressive or rude. She has nothing but love in her heart for everybody. Um, But sometimes, and that's what I really want to keep getting back to is if our intentions are pure and we are not toxic in what we share, we just, they're just pure love or whatever it is. It's just the purity of sharing what's in our soul. Then we shouldn't have to apologize for that. Now, it's
Right.
different if we are toxic or we are blaming or shaming or attacking or anything like that. We're
Right.
not talking about that. We're just talking about vulnerability as in sharing what's in our heart, how we
Right.
feel, owning it, not making anybody else responsible for how we feel. We're just owning, this is what's coming up for me, or this is what I'd like to share, or just in a very sort of innocent, very childlike, loving way.
And an honest way too, a place of transparency. Yeah, it's interesting. There's so many pieces to this puzzle. And I love what you said about your friend that she has, or the person you know that has such a sense of self where she doesn't have any fear or concern about what other people might think.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the analogy I want to play with, or someone to bring on into conversation, is the idea about, and I remember hearing this once, which really was a like a what type response, but then I was thinking, I understanding what they meant. And I get the point of this is when you give somebody a gift, like a birthday present or a Christmas present, once you've given them the gift, what they do with it has nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while to get this one, and I do understand it. But the idea being is like, and I think I'm not sure if this was at USM or somebody shared this somewhere, where they said it's like when you give somebody a gift, if they look at the gift in front of you, they put it on the ground and they jump up and down on it and crush it to pieces. Can you be fine with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's their gift now. You've given it to them. It's up to them to do what they want with it. And in that context, the idea about talking about this thing with vulnerability is if we share our truth, our honesty, and like you're saying, your friend did, where she had no fear of what people will think, what they say in response and what they do in response is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, yes, with the caveat as you're saying about when you've maybe you push too much onto them and you've not been respectful of their space.
Mm-hmm.
But the understanding of like when people don't get you the way you want to be received, if there is some feedback, great if you get it. But if they just do it because they don't care, that's their stuff, not yours. So when we take over responsibility for what somebody else thinks of us, we're crossing a line into an area we don't want to play in because it's not our business anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that challenge, a better word, of being vulnerable and then sort of trying to compensate for it afterwards is part of that hangover feeling. It's like we're trying to sort of clean up our quote mess, which isn't a mess, but we think it
Yes,
is.
okay. And this is something I'm sure you can talk to more because I tend to work with people that are um, no, I mean, I work with people who are single too, for sure, that have come out of, um, toxic relationships and are dating again. But I think this is a really, really good conversation to have in the dating world, because so often when you do go out on a date and you do like somebody and the sparks are there and you are vulnerable, you don't sort of like, hey, I love you, I want to get married to you, you're going to be the father of my children. We're not talking about that going that far, but you simply might express to somebody that you like them, and then that's not reciprocated. And
Hmm.
some people can just close down and run away and be like, oh, I'm never going to make the first move again. I'm going to wait
Right.
for them to. So talk about that because I know you work a lot with the singles. So how
Yeah,
do you?
that's the thing that it's not the only thing, but it's certainly one of the major pieces of the puzzle people face when they go through enough dates where they've not gone what they wanted. Is
Mhm,
this feeling like, do I even want to do it again? I'm done. I've had enough. I'm not going to date anymore. I'm going to be celibate the rest of my life. It's not a true statement, but it's like a feeling that comes up with just not wanting to bother because it's too much work. The thing is, and this is the thing about vulnerability, is that being vulnerable, ideally, isn't something that is effort and work. It's just simply the way you are.
mhm,
So that when you do go on a date and somebody doesn't get you, or doesn't want to be with you, or is not interested in you, you don't, again, take it personally. Back to that thing about the gift idea, when you give them a gift to do what they want with it. When you go on dates or meeting somebody for the first time and they don't reciprocate, they don't love you back, they don't show interest with you, sometimes it can feel like rejection. All
mhm.
right. Many times it can feel like rejection. Let's be clear about that.
Oh, but
But the
all
thing,
the time. Come on. No,
I was giving you some padding in there.
yeah, really.
the thing about rejection, I talk about this a lot, and I'm getting better. I'm not perfect at it myself, just to be transparent.
Mhm,
But the idea about rejection is this the amusement I have about rejection is that basically you're upset with something you didn't have, which you didn't have in the first place. Like
mhm,
you meet somebody, you go on a date with them, but they don't want you back. We get upset feeling rejected by them because they said no. But the thing is, we didn't have them in the first place. So why were you getting upset now that they said no to something that we didn't have before? But
yeah,
the wiring we have in ourselves is something about achieving or having that thing, that relationship, that person in our lives. And especially because we've been vulnerable, we've been exposing ourselves, been seen, and then they say no, we feel like, damn, all that effort, all that work, and they didn't like us back. What's wrong with me? Or what's wrong?
mhm,
It's
yeah,
like, no, the reality is they're not a match.
exactly.
Good
Ex-
news is they've removed themselves from the picture now. They can
mhm,
remove somebody better.
yeah. And what you're saying there, I was listening to you and thinking back to many years ago when I first became single after my marriage. I went on to Match for a while. Now I didn't even. So many years ago, I mean, people are like, "What the hell she's talking about anymore? Match what? Isn't that swipe right thing now?" And but I remember there was a thing where you could actually sort of you could like somebody. You could just I don't know what it was. You did something to say, "Oh, you're interesting." I don't know how you did it, but I remember I never ever once liked a man. I only responded to men that had hit like me.
Hmm.
And I look back now at how disempowering that was. That my ego or my fragility of not wanting to be rejected wouldn't even allow me to say, "Oh, I find you interesting." So basically, I was choosing out of men that had already said, "Oh, I find you interesting." Do you see how that was? So I never even, there was a whole, probably a whole load of men out there that I could have literally connected with and said, I mean, maybe 50% would have said, no, not interested. But there would have
Hmm.
been some that would have gone, oh, wow, yeah, you look interesting too. But
Right.
when we have that fear of, of putting ourselves out there, fear of being rejected, which again, that's a whole other show. We keep doing this, so we won't go into that. But
On
it,
topic leads to yes, absolutely. We keep
but
doing
it
that.
is. It's like if I make a move towards you and you don't respond, I I end up feeling bad about myself. I feel, as you
Mhm.
said, rejected, which is bizarre when you look at it. They don't even know you yet to reject you. Never mind. But it
Exactly.
is, but I'm still talking about the hangover of putting yourself out there. Let's just
Yeah.
stick to that. That I call it a hangover, but that we can call it regret, we can call it embarrassment, we can call it a lot of things, that those emotions that come up when we've actually been brave enough to step out into the world and go, I like you. Do you like me back?
Hmm.
So, Barry, I wanted to ask you, how many times have you, what it felt like for you? Because I'm sure as a man, and certainly the culture and the time where we grew up, you've probably put yourself out a hell of a lot more than I ever have. Um,
There was, yeah. I mean, coming through dating through the 80s and 90s, especially. Still now, but it's not. It's different now. It seems to have been, but certainly back then, it was always up to sort of me to do the. It felt like it was. It felt like, to be clear, it was up to me to make the first move, to initiate, to connect, to make that happen. And the rejection, which could be from the simple thanks but no thanks to massive shutdown. I mean, there's a spectrum of how it could be rejected or be responded to, put it that way. There was such a level of um, self at that point, self rejection as well.
yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, I was rejecting myself. And by the way, one sidebar, you mentioned about the dating sites you went on with Match. The dating apps do that now, where you can like somebody either way, male to female, and so on. But even so, even now with the dating apps, when I like the thing about dating apps I find interesting is when I like somebody, I may never know if they like me back or not. I'm sorry, excuse me. I may never know that they were interested in me at all because they don't like me back. So
Mhm.
the liking thing on the dating apps is a two-way street. So the men can like women, women can like men. But if you like somebody, there's no guarantee they get back to you. So there's no sense of rejection in the dating app scenario. Going out with somebody and spending time with them, or even phone calls, we have a few conversations and it just goes nowhere and nothing happens. The rejection factor still feels less um, painful.
Mhm.
In fact, it doesn't feel like rejection; it just feels like didn't fit. That's okay. I know it's partly because of my own journey that I've been on that I don't feel as much as I used to, but definitely for so many people out there who maybe not done quote the work or been through various support systems, have a sense of they're putting all their eggs in one basket, and when that basket gets rejected, they feel very painful, very upset about it. The thing is that rejection. I know I'm still wrestling with this one because I'm trying to handle on it. For me, rejection is such an interesting conversation because it isn't invested amount of time. The thing about rejection is that we get upset with something when we haven't invested that much time anyway to meet this person. So if we've gone out with somebody for a few months and then they say no and they reject us, okay, justifiably you can feel a bit upset by it, feel a bit like frustrated that you've exposed yourself, being vulnerable with them, and they didn't like you. But if it's just the first couple of dates or the first phone call, there's no investment yet.
Mhm.
So to feel rejected is almost overcompensating for something that didn't happen.
Yeah.
To answer your
Well,
question in some way.
yeah, and I think what you're pointing to, and this is definitely something we are going to go into in depth. I want it to be an actually a 4 week program. We're going to be talking about attachment styles because I think
Oh
that's
yes.
coming up
Oh
right
yeah.
now, and that is
Yeah.
a huge one. And I want us to do 4 shows on that. So we're just going to touch very gently here. But I think what you're talking about is
Yeah.
really pointing to that. There are some people that can, the degree to which you respond to your sharing your vulnerability is
Hmm.
very much tied into how you perceive, as you say, excuse me, rejection. Some
Yeah.
people wouldn't even, you can go out on 3 dates and it can feel like somebody's I don't even know how to describe it, but it can feel so soul destroying for that person to walk away. It hits
Mm.
on a level of pain that is mind boggling to some people. They're just like, what is wrong with you? You must be
Right.
crazy. But we have to be gentle and understand that, that is directly connected to that person's attachment style. And
Right.
it can feel like the end of the world to them. It can feel like the worst rejection possible, even
Mm.
when rationally, as you said, we didn't know them that well. There wasn't that much invested. So again, we're gonna talk about that. But I have another question for you.
Hmm.
Do you ever feel that say you go out on a first date, and do you show up with Barry, warts and all, or on a first date are you Barry with a little bit of a shield on? I'm just curious.
Um, Interesting. Well, first dates for me usually I have a whole thing about doing coffee dates before the real date sort of thing. So I like to have something more casual, which means that the time frame is more condensed.
Hmm.
So I'm totally present and real, but I'm not giving them the whole life story in that amount of time. So in the sense of being vulnerable, yes, there is a level of vulnerability there when I meet somebody first date. With the caveat, let me be clear that sometimes when I meet somebody in person, they're nothing like what I thought they were. So I
Hmm.
might hold back more because I don't feel like there's something there I want to be with. So it is based upon who I'm with. So
Mm.
I am very clear that my availability to be seen, to be vulnerable, is very much predicated on who I'm with. So that's definitely part of it.
Hmm.
So it's not going to be blindly vulnerable with everybody I meet. No, that's not the way I work. So being on those dates it's a range of answers
Yeah.
for one word.
Yeah. Well, I hear you, and I think that's very. Um, I think that's wise. I think that's just why would you, if you feel immediately when you meet somebody that they're not who you thought they were, and there's obviously it's not going to go anywhere really beyond that coffee date, then why open that door even wider? So it's not like you're going there and basically, like, as I said, armored up and shielded up because it's like, Harry's not going to invest before he knows it's safe to invest. I can see what you're saying is just that there's a certain point at where you just like it's not it doesn't serve either person to keep going into that sort of um, deeper conversation or more vulnerable conversation. Unless, I mean,
Right.
when I was single, I have to say, I did go out on a quite a, no, I say quite a few dates. I went on a few match dates, and there were some people that I knew immediately that I absolutely had no interest in romantically, but I really enjoyed them as a friend. And I thought, oh,
Hmm.
this is somebody I would like to sort of continue having a friendship with. And
Right.
there were some other people where I was like, oh my God, not just even, the armor and the shield. It was the armored wagon. It was like, get me out of here. Like, rescue me.
Right.
Oh my God. I mean, I think there are some men that, people think that the women are sort of ready to pounce and get married and everything. There are men out there too that are just like, would you meet my mother next week? Because you're the one for
Absolutely.
me. And
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, in fact, I was listening to an interview a couple of days ago where the guy was sharing about how he had these woman and man right into him, and it's because this is a whole thing conversation about when is it time to meet the kids.
Mhm,
And for her, she was clear that she wouldn't introduce the new date to her kids until she was sure he was there for the long haul,
mhm.
because she wanted to make sure that the kids would only meet somebody who was going to be serious. And he
Absolutely.
was upset with that, saying, like, well, I want to meet the kids up front, so I know if I like the kids and like her, then it's going to be a match.
Ah,
And so the perspectives of differences there,
yeah,
understanding that there is that um, different goals or
yeah.
different direction, different pathways to follow. So yeah, this is a key
Uh,
conversation
uh,
too.
Mine was just this person was just completely projecting and falling, falling in love, so called, and planning the wedding on the first lunch. It was like
Yeah, that's a bit of a clue that maybe there's something going on there.
exactly. I was like, oh my God, but yeah. So that's when you sit there and you go, I'm not sharing anymore. Just like
Indeed.
this is when I need an out. Um, so yeah, it's fascinating as you say. I mean, I'll fess up. When I was younger, I never. I mean, I was so messed up when I was younger that any form of rejection felt like annihilation to me. My
Yeah.
brain could not compute that it wasn't a good match. It was excuse me. It was very much I wasn't good enough. That's how I
Hmm.
perceived it. Therefore, I would say I ended 99.9% of my relationships because of that protectiveness that I had up, that inability to allow myself to be that vulnerable. It was like the hint of something, and I was out of there. And it might have just been a minor, it might have been a mood, it might have been, who knows what, but I wasn't sticking around to find out. It was like, if it, to me, it
Oh,
was, the fight or flight response was so, you know, prevalent in my relationships that, yeah, it was not a good thing. So,
no, I would say that I definitely had my own fair share of erroneous experiences in relationships. Definitely where the breakups weren't the most um, wisdom driven conversations, to say the least. They would, and yes, there were relationships that definitely that I would say ended because of overexposure of vulnerability,
yeah.
and so there was a hangover afterwards. The sense of just being regretful that like shared too much and was too open and now been burnt because of it.
Mm.
If it can happen, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember once being in my very first relationship, actually, and I was madly in love. I mean, he was a beautiful man. We were both at art school together, and I was a couple of years younger than him, and he was going to be moving on to another art school, and so it went. And I remember my mother saying to me, because my mother, she was like, it's better to end it now, love, before he finds somebody else at the new college, and just be like ships sailing in the night, passing each other. It was a lovely year you had together, and I completely followed her directions. So, like the next day, we're sitting there, and we're still apparently madly in love. We had been together for a year, and I remember saying to him, "It's over." And the look on his face, and I was like, "Done, gone, over." And I bumped
Yeah.
into him a few years later, and he asked me if we could have dinner, and we had dinner, and he was like, what the hell happened? We went from being madly in love to the next day you ending it with no explanation, no anything. And it was that sort of, again, I won't say this was so much of emotional hangover, but it was that part of me that was so afraid of vulnerability that I would end things before I could even get a chance to get hurt.
Yeah. It's almost like the it's being vulnerable. It's like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. You pull back into the shell, you protect again.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's not an unusual thing either. We do that.
yeah, exactly. So if you can imagine that level of defensiveness or protectiveness, that what can get triggered when somebody does actually say, "I don't want you" or "I'm not interested."
Hmm.
That's that wound that you're protecting, that rawness that's right underneath that. It's not just a little scratch. It's like somebody tears at it. So
Right.
you can ruminate for days later, like, what did I do? What did I say? Why did I? So it's pretty intense.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. This idea about having a post vulnerability hangover, it sounds trite to say it that way, but the reality is we do have the experience sometimes where we feel emotionally almost self-abused because
Mhm,
said or did things that we now regret doing. We have this sense of like, if only I take those words back
mhm.
and not do the things I did. It's already done.
Yeah, yeah.
So the question then becomes, how do you then, I won't say make peace is the wrong words, but how do you then become okay with what happened? Because
Yeah.
what's happened, that's the thing. And so the lesson of times I've learned over the years is really that once it's done, I mean, the thing is, once it's done, it is done. You can't change history. We don't have time machines.
Well, that, and
So,
I would do want to end on this because it's not like you've done something wrong. It's just purely that you opened your heart to another person and they've said
mhm,
no. So it's not the regret of, oh God, I can't believe I said that, in the sense of I was rude, aggressive, I attacked, I blamed, I anything. It's none of that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about simply opening up your heart and having somebody say, oh, thank you, but no thank you. That's not my thing. And what to do after you've done that, how to take care of yourself, how to understand that being vulnerable is actually a beautiful thing. You gave the person a gift. It's not something that you feel you should take back and wrap up in bandages and band-aids. And there was nothing wrong with it. You just shared that you were interested or that you had feelings for somebody. And just because they weren't receptive to that doesn't mean there's anything wrong or broken in you. It just, as you said, Barry, it's just not a fit. It took me years, thank God. I think certainly since the end of my divorce, I think, so it's been at least what sort of almost 20 years in a way, or 18 years, say. Um, Prior to that, it did feel like it was a rejection of the whole of me. It was my brain did not go to it's not a fit. So, and I share that because I just want people out there that are still in that stage of, oh God, I got to protect my heart. No, please don't protect your heart. Your heart is resilient. Your heart will get over, and your ego will get over it being a little bruised when you've exposed your heart or offered your heart to another person. It's a
yeah,
beautiful gift you gave them. There's no need to, like my friend said, there's no need to apologize for it. It is a gift, and sometimes the gift is as you said earlier, the gift is not received well, or the gift wasn't what they wanted, or whatever. But it doesn't mean that you have to go into that place of, I regret giving the gift. So please don't ever regret giving the gift. When we share our love and our hearts openly with each other, it's a beautiful thing, and keep doing it.
yeah, absolutely. The thing is that those situations, it's the receiver's choice, and it's nothing to do. It's not reflection on the giver. So
Yeah,
recognize that you're giving freely, and it's good to keep doing that.
yeah, exactly. And again, it's also nothing wrong with the receiver. If it's just not right, it's not right. They have every right to say thank you, but no thank you. So nobody's wrong or right in this situation. But I think what Barry and I are both saying is to encourage everybody to keep your hearts open and keep sharing and keep giving each other the gift of love and vulnerability.
I absolutely agree.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so thank you, everybody. We will see you again back here next week, and have a great week.
Take care of yourselves. We've got lots to talk about still, so stay tuned and keep coming back for more.
We will. I like the rejection. We can, no, maybe we've done. But hey, we'll find something to talk about. We always do, Barry.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
indeed. Take care of yourselves.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode, fresh and shiny, as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments at relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.